We're calling for a Windrush Act. Let's review what we called for in July 2024. The Windrush Act. We say to the Labour government, we are still waiting. A message for the Windrush pioneers and their descendants. The Labour Party's general election promise, July 2024. Sir Keir Starmer pledged a fundamental reset to promote respect and dignity for the Windrush generations amid plans to prevent such a scandal from being repeated. His plans include appointing a Windrush Commissioner, opening up access to the compensation scheme, and re-establishing the Windrush unit in the Home Office as part of an effort to improve the relationship between the government and the Windrush generation. He accused the Tories, the Conservatives, of having presided over a failing compensation scheme, the disbanding of the Major Change Programme, and a complete unwillingness to learn the lessons of the Windrush Scandal. He said, "Justice has taken too long for the Windrush community. A government that I lead won't let this happen again. And where the Tories have dragged their feet, I am determined to get money out of the door to compensate those who were failed by the state." Sir Keir Starmer also added, "The Windrush generation embodies the best of Britain: determination, spirit, public service, and graft. But instead of being thanked, they've been badly mistreated. A Labour government will offer a fundamental reset moment for the Windrush generation, with respect and dignity at its very core." So said Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown and Windrush pioneers and their descendants. We're calling for a Windrush Act in recognition by the United Kingdom that its past actions have unfairly impacted on people of African Caribbean descent, both living in the United Kingdom and in its former colonies. It is a recognition that this impact has consequences across all aspects of people's lives: citizenship, community cohesion, education, criminal justice, work, health. The Windrush Act places a duty on public bodies to reduce race disparities for outcomes in their work, as exposed by the government race disparities audit. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown, Windrush pioneers and their descendants. We're calling for a Windrush Act, an apology for the wrongs that have been done historically by the United Kingdom to people of African Caribbean descent. These wrongs are clearly defined in the Wendy Williams Lessons Learned Review, and it is to the righting of these wrongs that the Windrush Act is addressed. This is not to say that there are not similar wrongs done to other cohorts of people that need to be addressed by similar legislation. This apology is enacted in law so that it's clearly an apology from the nation rather than a here today, gone tomorrow politician. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown. Windrush pioneers and their descendants. We're calling for a Windrush Act, reparations for past wrongs. The reparation for Windrush pioneers who are today living with the consequences of Britain's past wrongs. It is reparation that goes beyond mere financial compensation to individuals, but instead provides resources to affected peoples and communities to support them in what they want to do with their lives. To this end, the Windrush Act will establish a Commonwealth Community Cohesion Fund for the development of projects in the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth to tackle disparities and rebuild socio-economic ties of communities damaged by the Windrush scandals and other historic unfair actions negatively impacting on this cohort. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown. Windrush pioneers and their descendants. We're calling for a Windrush Act. Restitution. Since 1948, the citizenship of those who arrived on the Windrush and that of their descendants has been repeatedly eroded, particularly by the 1971 Immigration Act and by the current hostile environment. This erosion leaves many within the African Caribbean cohort finding themselves British in all but name, and therefore having to prove their Britishness when it was Britain that eroded and undermined their Britishness in the first place. The Windrush Act fully restores the Britishness to this cohort. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown. Windrush pioneers and their descendants. We're calling for a Windrush Act, remembering to this day, the United Kingdom prefers to tell a story about its colonial past that is often unrecognizable to those who live that past. Only by telling a more honest story about its colonial past can the country show that its citizens of colonial descent are as worthy citizens as any other. The Windrush Act holds the state and its education system to a more honest telling. The Windrush Act remembers what Great Britain meant to those pioneering men and women who saw in the country a set of ideals and values that led them to board the SS Windrush in 1948. We're calling for a Windrush Act. Actions speak louder than words. The time for action is now. Translate our words into action. Contact WD Legal. Website address www.wdlegal.co.uk. Join the campaign to secure the Windrush Act. Together, we will make the difference. Hashtag Windrush Act now. That was the review of what was promised by the new Labour government, led by Sir Keir Starmer. We're calling for a Windrush Act. But has the Labour government lived up to its promises? The interview that follows will review in detail what progress has been made and what progress is necessary to be made for the Windrush Act to be signed by His Majesty. We're calling for a Windrush Act. Let's review what we called for in July 2024. The Windrush Act. We say to the Labour government, we are still waiting. A message for the Windrush pioneers and their descendants. The Labour Party's general election promise, July 2024. Sir Keir Starmer pledged a fundamental reset to promote respect and dignity for the Windrush generations amidst plans to prevent such a scandal from being repeated. His plans include appointing a Windrush Commissioner, opening up access to the compensation scheme, and re-establishing the Windrush unit in the Home Office as part of an effort to improve the relationship between the government and the Windrush generation. He accused the Tories, the Conservatives, of having presided over a failing compensation scheme, the disbanding of the Major Change Programme, and a complete unwillingness to learn the lessons of the Windrush Scandal. He said, "Justice has taken too long from the Windrush community. A government that I lead won't let this happen again. And where the Tories have dragged their feet, I am determined to get money out of the door to compensate those who were failed by the state." Sir Keir Starmer also added, "The Windrush generation embodies the best of Britain: determination, spirit, public service, and graft. But instead of being thanked, they've been badly mistreated. A Labour government will offer a fundamental reset moment for the Windrush generation, with respect and dignity at its very core." So said Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown and Windrush pioneers and their descendants, we're calling for a Windrush Act in recognition by the United Kingdom that its past actions have unfairly impacted on people of African Caribbean descent, both living in the United Kingdom and in its former colonies. It is a recognition that this impact has consequences across all aspects of people's lives: citizenship, community cohesion, education, criminal justice, work, health. The Windrush Act places a duty on public bodies to reduce race disparities for outcomes in their work, as exposed by the government race disparities audit. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown, Windrush pioneers and their descendants, we are calling for a Windrush Act, an apology for the wrongs that have been done historically by the United Kingdom to people of African Caribbean descent. These wrongs are clearly defined in the Wendy Williams Lessons Learned Review, and it is to the righting of these wrongs that the Windrush Act is addressed. This is not to say that there are not similar wrongs done to other cohorts of people that needs to be addressed by similar legislation. This apology is enacted in law so that it's clearly an apology from the nation rather than a here today, gone tomorrow politician. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown, Windrush pioneers and their descendants, we're calling for a Windrush Act, reparations for past wrongs. The reparation for Windrush pioneers who are today living with the consequences of Britain's past wrongs. It is reparation that goes beyond mere financial compensation to individuals, but instead provides resources to affected peoples and communities to support them in what they want to do with their lives. To this end, the Windrush Act will establish a Commonwealth Community Cohesion Fund for the development of projects in the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth to tackle disparities and rebuild socio-economic ties of communities damaged by the Windrush scandals and other historic unfair actions negatively impacting on this cohort. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown, Windrush pioneers and their descendants. We're calling for a Windrush Act. Restitution. Since 1948, the citizenship of those who arrived on the Windrush and that of their descendants has been repeatedly eroded, particularly by the 1971 Immigration Act and by the current hostile environment. This erosion leaves many within the African Caribbean cohort finding themselves British in all but name, and therefore having to prove their Britishness when it was Britain that eroded and undermined their Britishness in the first place. The Windrush Act fully restores the Britishness to this cohort. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown, Windrush pioneers and their descendants. We're calling for a Windrush Act, remembering to this day, the United Kingdom prefers to tell a story about its colonial past that is often unrecognizable to those who live that past. Only by telling a more honest story about its colonial past can the country show that its citizens of colonial descent are as worthy citizens as any other. The Windrush Act holds the state and its education system to a more honest telling. The Windrush Act remembers what Great Britain meant to those pioneering men and women who saw in the country a set of ideals and values that led them to board the SS Windrush in 1948. We're calling for a Windrush Act. Actions speak louder than words. The time for action is now. Translate our words into action. Contact WD Legal. Website address www.wdlegal.co.uk. Join the campaign to secure the Windrush Act. Together, we will make the difference. Hashtag. It is true. It is true. Together, we will make the difference. It's the motivator here. This is where we translate our words into action, and where success is ours for the taking. How you feeling, people? How you feeling? Oh, it has been a wonderful few days, I must say. I've encountered such wonderful, enthralling, inspiring human beings, men and women of all ages, who are just inspired on life. They just want to do good for themselves, their families, their communities, their societies. And they're high on good and doing good. Now, can you imagine if we had 1 billion people, just 1 billion? Oh, can you imagine if every human being was inspired just for being alive and to be able to give and support their fellow human beings, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their religious affiliation, regardless of their social class or education, but simply because they're human beings and we care for each other, understanding that we are but one human family. I'm assuring you, if an alien, yeah, Three-Eye Atlas, for example, if an alien were to visit Earth, they will see one people. They couldn't distinguish between the so-called ethnicities, yeah, because they are but surface differences. We are but one people. It is incumbent upon ourselves to support each other. Those in need, we support them. Those who are capable, we support them. Those who are talented, we give them support because together we benefit. In unity is strength. And thank you for spending the time here on The Motivator Show. We've got a lot to pack in this particular episode of The Motivator Show. There's much to achieve. But in 30 minutes or so? Yep, 30 minutes. We're going to have a keynote interview, a keynote speaker, if you like. Most certainly, keynote interview with Anthony Brown, yeah, who's leading the charge for a Windrush Act. And there's a specific reason why it's a act of parliament that's being called for, as opposed to a simple compensation scheme. But we'll come to that later on. Before then and now, I've got a few announcements. As per usual, I want to congratulate that inspired human being, Sonia Brown, MBE. You know, she consistently understates herself, but she is a remarkable human being, a real, genuine influencer. I don't mean in social media sense. I mean in the opinions. You know, her contacts and ability to influence others. You know, hey Sonia, hey, thumbs up to you. Thumbs up to you. I received quite a few inquiries about your work, particularly with women. Yeah, yeah. And I know that my question of her in relation to independence and coming together with the men, the other half of the human population, huh? You notice how she handled it? She understood the importance, whether it be feminist or otherwise. Working together in unity is strength. But her work with women is, of course, incredibly important. Incredibly important. Okay? Because it's important to have that dialogue with women. Because we are not talking enough to women. We hear from them, but we're not talking enough to women, us men in public. A real heart-to-heart discussion how women's roles evolved over the past 60, 70 years. Yeah, yeah. We need to really talk. Huh? That critical role that women play in our societies. We need to discuss it. Mhm. And of course, also appreciate the different phases of being a girl, young woman, mature woman. Those different phases of womanhood, as it were. Mhm. And what is femininity? Okay. Why should women be the backbone to a home? Why? Mhm. You know, we need to ask these questions. What is the economic role of women in society? You know, what does menopause do to women? Mhm. Often unaware of what it's doing to women. Mhm. There are many questions to ask. Yeah, women and childbirth, women and child rearing. Many questions to ask. That we need to have dialogue with women, better understand what is happening. Mhm. Our failure to do so places our civilization at risk. That's how serious it is, I assert to you. Mhm. So it's vital to talk to women. Of course, young men, absolutely, absolutely. But ultimately, we males, I assert, create these environments, not purely for ourselves, but for women, ultimately. Oh my gosh, he says, you know. But, you know, another episode, another time. But I want to thank Sonia Brown, MBE, for her work in the community and for the interaction and responses to our questions. The full podcast will be published soon, but I'm just very conscious we're in the month of December, and there's a period during this month of December when you have more time to watch these podcasts. Okay, so we're just storing them up for you. This will be a powerful occasion for you. Powerful occasion. She noted quite a few women, achievers, notable women here in Britain in particular, achievers who we do not recognize enough, and we should. We will. Here, this is the Motivator Show, because this is where we translate our words into action and where success is ours for the taking. Well done, Sonia. Well done. Well done. Well done. Thank you. And if you missed that particular live broadcast, you go to the YouTube channel and you will see it there. Sonia Brown, MBE. Mhm. You'll see her. Well done. Well done. I also, of course, want to give recognition to one other past contributor, and it's a particularly important one here, okay? Because the Caribbean, and yes, these past 6 weeks, did quite a few episodes around the Caribbean for obvious reasons, but let me just remind ourselves of the um, revolution that took place in Grenada that was stamped out by a perverted, aggressive American government. Stamped out because Moorish Bishop and his party introduced free healthcare at the point of use, free education at the point of use, focus on focus on training. Yeah, yeah, there you are. That's what they wanted. They wanted redistribution of the land so the people could farm the land. Yeah. There's a great deal there, huh? There's a great deal there. I would have thanked my guest, Kwabena, who spoke with such eloquence, yeah? Such wisdom. It was, no, he's the type of person who enters a room and you naturally want to just bow your head in appreciation. I would have thanked him for presenting what was an outstanding canter through the history of Grenada and its significance in the history of people of the Caribbean and Africa. Mhm. And if you haven't looked at the regime of Moorish Bishop and what he achieved in such a short period of time, he is, as it were, the forerunner to Captain, indeed, His Excellency, President Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso. Absolutely. You notice that His Excellency President Burkina Faso, President Ibrahim Traore, always has security guards around him. Yeah? Yeah. Learn the lessons of the past so we can build a better future. There you are. Yeah. Well done. Well done, Kwabena. And that particular podcast and the series, because it was jam packed full of inspiring, useful information, will also be released in the coming days. Don't you worry. Oh, yeah. A truly inspired human being. I want to thank you for blessing us with your presence here. And we need to get him back here again because there's much information to be shared. Just like, indeed, Sonia Brown, much to be shared, much to learn. And as you be inspired by these human beings, you see, all we want to do is take that energy and share that with others. And in doing so, you have a cumulative, yeah, knock on, yeah. It's like a wave effect upon humanity. And so therefore, that feeling of depression, being depressed and defeated and downcast, will be swept away because there are lights amongst humanity that will light your way. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm high on life. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. The inspired human being. I'm privileged to be alive now. I'm privileged to encounter such wonderful people. Praise Jah, he says. Rastafari. Oh yeah, oh yeah. All righty, because that's two announcements, but let me pause there. I want to ensure in the run up to what will be a keynote interview in what just under 25 minutes. Okay, uh, there are still a few other announcements I want to make, but before that, I want to now move on to the next segment. The next segment, of course, is included in all of the Motivator shows, live shows, because we're responding to a public health emergency. A public health emergency that recognizes that throughout our communities, there are prevailing medical conditions that are weighing down the community. The three I want to mention immediately include diabetes. Yeah. Far too many families here in Britain, and I know for certain in the Caribbean, as was announced by Professor Hilary Beckles, the Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies. He announced that every other family in the Caribbean has members who have diabetes. And we're approaching similar levels here in Britain as well. That is a public health announcement, emergency that we all should be responding to. Similarly, growing numbers of people with high blood pressure. Yeah. When all the consequential impacts of high blood pressure, such as heart conditions and so on, again, weighing down the community. The third one I should mention, of course, is obesity or fatness. Yeah. On average, women of African descent here in Britain, in the Caribbean, and in America are heavier than the men. As mammals, that is abnormal. That is abnormal. Mhm. That should not be the case. But what it's doing, of course, to women is shortening their lives and increasing the number of illnesses that they acquire as they get older. And most certainly impacting on their ability to gestate healthy babies, and those babies then have those ongoing conditions. It is a public health emergency. I've just cited three. There are a few others, but those three are uppermost because I encounter them every day. I know for certain within an hour of me completing this podcast, I will have encountered many people with diabetes, high blood pressure, or indeed who are obese, fat, overweight, and weighing themselves down. I have to be direct, but I have to be honest. This is no shame. We've got to love, but understand that we need to help support each other so that we can reduce the instances of these conditions within the communities. What I respect, of course, are the experts who share this information with people like myself, okay, on the hope that we will note the conditions and remind people that if in doubt, ask questions. I say again, if in doubt, ask questions. And I say to people, look, don't listen to me. Listen to the expert. Hear what the experts say, those who devoted their lives to medicine, to public health, to nutrition. Listen to them. I'm just a messenger. They're the experts. Okay? If in doubt, ask questions. So there is a public health director for London, Professor Kevin Fenton. His words always are words that I, and I suggest you, will be smart enough to listen to. But his advice doesn't address a specific condition, it addresses our lifestyle. His recommendation to enhance your lifestyle It's pretty basic stuff, really, when you listen. Listen to what he has to say. And if you've got any contention with him, just write to him, the Public Health Director for London. Yeah, there you are. Listen to what he has to say. Here we go. 1. Mindful and balanced eating. Nourish wisely. Eat whole, balanced meals with awareness to support energy and well-being. 2. Get outside. Be with nature. Time outside reduces stress, improves mood, and strengthens your connection to the world. 3. Stay curious, stay engaged, explore new interests, keep your mind sharp, build social contacts, and boost your happiness. 4. Get active, move it or lose it. Move daily, lift weight, and do cardio. Exercise, improve physical, mental, mood, and energy. 5. Prioritize rest and sleep. Disconnect, rest. Quality sleep supports mental clarity, emotional balance, and overall health. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward, really, isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah. 5 very simple, straightforward pieces of advice. Who can argue with that? Yeah, that's what he says. He's the expert. Yeah. And if you take on board his words, his advice, okay, you can follow him on social media. Yeah. If you take on board that advice, I've got a 99.99999% confidence that you will feel a difference in your life. That's all we want. I'm not being paid. Let's just put it away. I'm not being paid. I'm assuring you, I am not being paid. I'm just a human being. And if we display empathy for each other, okay, you have the ability to inform and influence each other. Empathy breeds good because you are able to place yourself in the other person's shoes, okay, and feel and understand from their perspective why this has happened. Mhm. And to help them to overcome their personal, indeed life challenges. If every human being were helping other human beings to this effect, not just their family members, we have a transformed community, a transformed nation, hey, a transformed wealth, indeed, world. Yeah, not true? Those moral standards that religious people claim for themselves, but actually it's just common sense standards, would transform the world. So what I'm heartened by is the numbers of you who heard these messages, understood these importance, yeah, understood that these messages are for you, yeah, for us. They are our messages, and have understood if we work together in common aim and common purpose, recognizing that your health is your highest wealth, that we can transform our personal lives, indeed our communities' lives, indeed our society's lives together. Each of us are the change makers, as King Kabada would say of the African Continental Unity Party. We're all change makers. We don't need a messiah. We don't need a politician or a leading figure. Yeah, we are all change makers, and together we can make the difference. So what I'm heartened by is the numbers of you who've heard these messages and have responded, who've come together in common aim and common purpose, set up your own exercise groups in your own communities, your own towns, your cities, understanding to collaborate to pool the resources, to obtain the facilities so you can exercise together. Because yes, you could do it by yourself, you can run very, very fast. But if we run together, you're more than likely to go much further together for much longer periods because we are doing it together. With one person feeling a bit weak and tired, other persons lift them up, and we keep moving together. That's how civilizations grow. Healthier, stronger, more determined. That's how it happens. You are the change makers. So what I'm heartened by is the numbers who've heard these messages, have responded, and have set up your own exercise groups. People from diverse backgrounds come together in common aim and common purpose and exercising together. I must say, my own little area, we make sure we support those exercise groups, ensuring that they function and they grow, they have the resources that they can continue to grow because their community benefits, or social value is off the scale, off the scale. So I will never stop supporting such organizations who come together in common aim and common purpose. I want you to watch this group of people who've come together in common aim and common purpose, who've understood that working together will and can make the difference. Here we go. Let's play this one. Here we go. Here we go. Professor Kevin Fenton says, I'm a public health director. Here are 5 things you can do to improve your health. 1. Mindful and balanced eating. Nourish wisely. Eat whole, balanced meals with awareness to support energy and well-being. 2. Okay, it's working now. Right. I know you're sitting down in your chairs. Come on now, let's get up for a moment. Let's stretch those legs. Come on, let's do this together. Get the blood flowing through. Oh yes. There you go. Let's bend your knees for a moment. Yep, they've come together in common aim and common purpose. Understanding, pooling their resources together. Together, we can make the difference in our health and well-being. That's it. Put your arms up now. Just stretch your arms. That's it. There you go. Come on, stretch your arms. Oh yes. Oh yes, I feel you. Oh, come on now. That's it. Oh, bend those knees. You see what I'm doing? They're bigger than small, they're wide and they're thin. Yeah. I know. I feel it as well. Ooh. Come on now. You can do it. That's it. Perfect. Oh yes. Absolutely. Oh yes. You have it. That's the way to do it. Just a few minutes exercise. There you go. Another 30 seconds to go now. Here we go. Another 30 seconds. This makes all the difference. We're having days. We're having weeks. We're having months to your life. Just by these simple exercise routines. Yep. We are our brothers and sisters keepers. That's right. Look, they've got the children there. Yep. Teaching the children to work together in common aim and common purpose has genuine health benefit. Go on, Ishmael. Hold on. There you are. You see them? There you go. That's it. There you are. Makes all the difference, huh? There you go. Listen, put your arms up. Stretch it. Put it down. Put your legs up. done. Well done. Well done. Well done. Well done. Well done. I'm, I'm going to pause that there. I'm going to pause it there. But you understand the sentiments and why we devote just a few minutes in each of the Demotivator shows live podcasts to public health messages, lifestyle messages. It's for you. There is no personal financial gain on my part. Not selling a product, not doing any of that. Yeah, there's no endorsement, none of that. Just honest, just honest messages for you. For you then to make a decision about yourself, assessing your health. And if you haven't been to the doctor, particularly those men out there, I was one of you myself. If you've been to the doctor for years, get to the doctor. Get those annual checkups. Get those annual checkups. Yeah. Women, yeah, check yourselves to make sure you make sure that you're right as well. Mhm. And together we can transform our lives. Yeah. And I've got to say, that particular group of people who are based here in South London, where I'm based, okay, are truly an inspired group of people. They now meet every Monday and Wednesday evening. Dedicated. I often walk by. I don't go in. I don't want to disrupt, of course. You know, and listen to them come together, common aim and common purpose. Didn't know each other, but they just arrived because they recognize this is the place to be. Not only is it a place to exercise, it's also a place, you know what, just to mill and be merry, you know? Look, let me put their details on front. If you're in South London, you want to, you know, just join a group of people, just honest people who just want to exercise together and share that camaraderie with you. They meet every Monday and Wednesday between 6:30 and 8 p.m. They now call themselves Countdown Health and Wellbeing. They meet at 12 Tatum Street, Tatum Street, here in London, and postcode S for sugar, E17, 1T for Togo, N for Nigeria. The email address, it's countdown0405 at gmail.com. Telephone number, again, if in the UK, it's 07960 803 588. I commend the work of Countdown to you all and all similar organizations that are there to promote positive health and well-being and come togetherness. Yeah. Well done. Keep up the good work, Countdown. Keep up the good work, each one of you. And indeed, I also want to pay respect to the offshoot that have come off this organization who are springing up all over the borough of Southwark and South London. Oh, yeah, we're having an effect. Oh, yeah, it's the Motivator Show. This is where we translate our words into action, where success is ours for the taking. Yes, I'm high and live. Yeah, I know. Oh, I say again, to encounter inspired people who believe in themselves and want to do better for themselves, not only for themselves, but their loved one, for their families, and indeed for the wider community. Understand, being empathetic, understanding is a human quality that we must nurture and protect at all times. And in doing so, we can transform our lives, our families' lives, our communities' lives, indeed, our nation's lives. Thumbs up, yeah? Thumbs up. Thumbs up to you. Well done, well done, well done. All right. What I want to do now, I now want to focus on the issue of the day. Okay. The first issue I want to tackle before our main interview, and a number of you be aware that the Motivator Show has devoted to the violent hurricane that swept through the Caribbean and targeted particularly Jamaica and indeed Haiti. Mhm. Hurricane Melissa. Winds up to 185 miles an hour. Yeah, 185 miles an hour. Gosh, can you imagine? Can you imagine? Devastated large swathes of the island. And even today, the majority of those whose homes were destroyed are still living in hovels. Yeah? Public buildings were destroyed, and that includes hospitals, schools, and health centers, and so on. Mhm. The island is living off aid at the moment. It's still yet to get to that building stage. And I have had a series of guests who've spoken on this subject. We must not allow the world to forget the devastation caused by Hurricane Melissa. A hurricane which is the result of countries such as Britain, United States of America, France, yeah, Italy, Belgium, Germany, and their industrial revolution, which resulted in pumping billions of tons of atmospheric warming gases into the atmosphere up there. And what it's doing is warming up the planet. Yep, that's what it's doing. 200 years, it's now warming up the planet. And that means that the water, particularly in the South Atlantic and so on, is warmer than usual and it's affecting the weather patterns. So increasingly, for the next century or more, these storms will become increasingly violent. The people of Jamaica are not responsible for this ongoing global catastrophe. They're not responsible for it. Jamaica emits 0.000% of any emissions into the atmosphere. Tiny fraction. Britain, America, Germany, France, Belgium, Italy, yeah, indeed Japan, have been the principal emitters, historic emitters. Yes, there are other countries who are now emitting more, that's true. But compared to the countries I've listed, and there are a few more, no. So we have a moral imperative to help those who are suffering the consequence of industrialization here in this part of Asia, Eurasia. Mhm. And therefore, we cannot and will not forget here on the Motivator Show. I want you to see one example. Let me put it up on the screen. If I can put it up on the screen now. I want to give you one example of a school and how it looked. Okay, let me dip up this one. If I can just find one for you that might be useful to you. And let's watch this one, for example. Watch this. There we go. The New Building Early Childhood Institution is located in the community of New Building on premises owned by the community. The institution is in close proximity to the Junction Town Centre. The institution began operation in 1978 with 14 students and one teacher practitioner and a cook. The school population kept growing and growing over the years, and after operating for 33 years in the same location, it grew out of the facility. In the year 2011, with an enrollment of over 60 students, the school was relocated to its present location in the New Building Community Centre. Presently, there are 36 students. That's 22 girls and 14 boys enrolled at the school. They cater for children aged 3 to 6 years from the New Building and surrounding communities. The institution now has a staff complement of 4 staff members, 1 principal trained teacher, and 2 practitioners, and a cook. Your help to rebuild the school will be greatly appreciated by a very humble community. That is one of a number of communities whose public buildings have been destroyed. You could see the building as it was, how it was devastated by the hurricane, and now the children cannot attend school. Can you imagine? An organization you will recognize who've been here on the Motivator Show, the P&P UK, have launched a disaster relief fund. And they ask us, we, to contribute so that school can be rebuilt, so the children can go back to school. I'm going to put it on the screen how you can contribute to that process. There we go. So PNP UK, oh indeed, out of many one people, Hurricane Melissa Disaster Relief Fund. Send your donations to the People's National Party UK. They are, just to be clear, here in the UK, they are a not-for-profit social enterprise. Okay, all resources raised are devoted to their campaigns. The bank with NatWest Bank, a sort code 600802, account number 2986123. And in the reference, if you include DRF Melissa, all donations will be acknowledged and we will provide regular updates as the school comes back into operation. And we hope in a future episode to speak directly to the head teacher. Let's hear the head teacher's opinion of his community that he serves. This is a worthy cause. This is a worthy cause. This is a worthy cause. It is pretty poignant when you read it, okay? So please support PNP UK. Please support them. Details will be in the comments section for this video for those of you who may have missed the details, okay? But we ask you to give generously to a specific institution that has been devastated, so you can see where your money goes. You could see the rebuilding happen. And you can see the smiling face of the children once that rebuilding is complete. I also would, of course, give light to another guest of mine, that, of course, a great human being, Lee Jasper, a man who cares. I tell you, he really cares. If there's empathy, he's walking empathy. He understands the importance of working together. His episodes with me was really inspiring. And what we are demanding is that the government, this government here in Britain, gives more to the island of Jamaica. 7 million has been earmarked. That clearly is, well, not enough. I'm going to say it. I support the Labour government. Misunderstand. That is not enough. That is not enough. I want you to hear from Lee himself, okay, who himself was a dedicated social entrepreneur. He is indeed a campaigner of incredible and international repute. Okay, listen to his words. Listen to the appeal articulated by Lee Jasper.
Hey family, my name's Lee Jasper. I'm a veteran activist here from London, England. And I just want to talk about Hurricane Melissa and the British government and the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer's response to that hurricane. Family, look, Jamaica and areas of the Caribbean are on its knees. People are desperate, homeless, unable to access medical supplies and treatment. Children are left homeless because their grandmother's house has been completely obliterated. People are unable to go to school. People have no valid forms of employment. And all Britain can offer is £7 million. I mean, it's a disgusting insult to the Jamaican community. And we should be very clear in terms of what our response should be. I'm not sure what we're supposed to say, but thank you to Keir Starmer for 7 million change. I could find more change down the back of this sofa than Starmer seems to have found for Jamaica. And just imagine, people, we spent 20 billion on war for the Ukrainians, 20 billion. And we opened our doors, as we should have done, to victims of war who needed a safe evacuation. But we have exactly the same scenario with people in Jamaica and other areas of the Caribbean, whereby they're homeless, they've got no form of valid long-term employment, they're living on emergency package. Those of us who are in the United Kingdom, who are relatives throughout the Caribbean should be able to relax our humanitarian visa laws and bring them here so they can have quiet convalescence and respite, care and attention from their families here in the United Kingdom whilst Jamaica is rebuilding, and they can return after that. So we're calling for two things, family. I need your 100% support on this, because once all the Christmas and the emergency stuff has died away, Jamaica is still going to be in a problem, and probably even a bigger problem if the rumoured health outbreaks and epidemics break out as a consequence of lack of sanitation and clean water. And so I'm calling on you to support our petition. You might be able to see the QR code there if I just move to the side. Here is the QR code. Hope it's visible. If not, maybe I can make it more visible. Here is the QR code. All you have to do is put that into your phone and sign the petition. We also have a public meeting on the 12th of December at the engine room in Tottenham Hale. We've done one meeting in Brixton. We're doing another in Tottenham Hale, and we're having another hurricane emergency meeting in Wales, Manchester, as well as Preston. And why are we doing this, family? Because we think we need a national lobby of Parliament on Prime Minister's question time to take 5,000, 6,000 of us to Parliament to press the Prime Minister and your individual MP to increase aid to Jamaica, as Dawn Butler's already written in The Guardian to that effect, and we're fully supportive and behind that. To talk to your Prime Minister and MP and lobby them to relax the visa control. How is it that an 8-year-old child whose parents live in the United Kingdom and who was living with her grandmother in Jamaica is denied visa entry on humanitarian grounds to the United Kingdom? But that's what the latest stories we're seeing coming out of The Guardian and other news outlets. So we need a national lobby. Give Jamaica much more aid. 7 million, make that 50 million. How about that? How we make it 50 million pounds next year that the UK government gives?
Well, we'll hear more from Lee after the interview, but that's just a taster. Well, what I'm going to do before I go to my guest, I'm going to put up that QR code. There you are on the screen. So those of you who are watching this via TV, you can indeed, that's the QR code. And that would enable you to sign the petition. That would enable you to sign the petition. Okay, and just to remind you, of course, the petition calls upon the government to give more to the Caribbean, more to Jamaica. And indeed, you can go to www.change.org, and you put in the search Britain 7 million emergency aid, and you can see there for Jamaica and the wider Caribbean. It's a joke, indeed. Well done, and well said, Lee. But we'll hear more from him later on in this podcast. I now must move to my guest. Let's see if I can bring my guest in. Go on, okay. If I can bring my guest in this side in the Caribbean, doesn't he? Look at him. Oh my gosh. Anthony, can you hear us all right? Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Wonderful, wonderful. There you are. I just love the colour behind you. It's got that wonderful, relaxing feel to it.
It's the sun and the sea.
Okay, I hear you. Now you're slightly off centre. You might just want to move it to your right, I think, a little more. The other way, yep. There, a little more, and perfect. That's perfect. You've got it now. That's perfect. Now you are centre. You're centre stage. First of all, welcome again. It's good to see you, and you're looking well. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, of course, I know you, and I'm sure many of my audience know you, but since the last time you were here, I've taken on a good few thousand new audience members, okay? So I'm going to ask you, please, just to introduce yourself, say your name, the organization, okay, and why the Windrush campaign is important to you personally, and just to share how you were personally affected. Over to you.
Okay, so I'm Anthony Brown. I'm the co-founder of an organization called Windrush Defenders Legal Community Interest
Mhm,
Company.
mhm.
I'm also the chairman of Preston Windrush Generations and Descendants
Yes.
UK. And I'm also, sorry,
That's your alarm, huh? Early morning alarm.
yeah,
We're live, people.
yeah, I'm
Okay.
also a member of the Home Office's Stakeholders Advisory Group.
Mhm,
How I got involved in all of that is
mm,
that in 2018, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting was being held in London, and information was being put in the press about what was happening to people from the Caribbean, that they were being deported and that they were being put in
mm.
detention, losing their rights. And Theresa May apologized for all that and asked for people who
She did.
um, had been impacted to come forward. And she'd put a scheme in place called the Windrush scheme, and said that she would pay compensation. Now, I had been impacted
How? Yeah. Explain how you were impacted. Yeah.
in
Yeah. Yeah.
in the early 1980s. So for me, this had been going on for quite a while because I'd come here as a child, age 6, to join my dad, who had come here as a citizen of the United Kingdom and colonies. So
Oh,
Jamaica was a
what does that
colony.
mean?
Well,
Okay.
Jamaica was a colony of the
Hmm.
United Kingdom,
All right.
and Britain had declared through legislation that all the people that lived in her colonies and lived in the UK were
Hmm.
citizens, all citizens with equal rights. Uh,
Oh,
uh, and so
is that
my dad,
1948 Act? Is that 1948 Act?
that was in 1948. Yeah, Section
Hmm.
4
Hmm.
of that act declared
Hmm.
that we were all citizens of the United Kingdom and colonies. I mean, we had the Empire Windrush in 1948 as well, but I'm talking about my family at the moment. So my
Hmm.
dad came in 1960,
Hmm.
before Jamaica became independent,
Aha.
and
Right.
then I came afterward. But when Jamaica became independent, uh, the Jamaica Independence Act passed in Parliament, unbeknownst to my dad and many other people living here, took
Right.
away that citizenship of the United Kingdom and colonies and made
Right.
them Jamaicans. They gave them Jamaican citizenship.
Okay, can I ask you just to pause for a moment because there's lots of information packed into what you've said. So,
Mm,
we just want to take the audience with us because you and I are very familiar with the details. But I've learned
mm,
the lesson that we give a lot of information out, so we need to help people to understand. So, first of all, the 1948 Act. Now, can I just ask you very slowly because I've described this act to others, and they're in disbelief. So I just want you to repeat what's its significance for those who were born in the colonies of Britain in 1948? What was its significance?
right. Its significance is it created British citizenship. Prior to that,
Mhm.
you had Australia as part of the empire. You had
Mhm.
India, Pakistan, South Africa, Canada, but they were
Aha.
being given independence after the war. So the question was, okay, well, if they're independent, who are the British? And so
Aha.
Parliament made this law and declared who were then citizens, who was within our club.
Right.
India had left the club.
Indeed. Yes.
Australia
Mhm.
had left. Canada. So this was defining, this legislation was defining after the war who
Right.
were citizens of the United Kingdom and colonies. And
Right.
so that's the significance of that piece of legislation.
Can I just say then? So, I don't believe, despite the fact that I was brought here as a baby, okay?
Mm,
But but I want, I will admit here in public that I was born at a time prior to Jamaica becoming independent, and
yes.
therefore I was born British.
You were.
under this list. There you
Mm,
go. Do you know what? My parents were unaware of that, even though they now both have passed. They were
mm,
unaware of that fact.
mhm,
Could I recall, as you might recall,
mhm,
that many people from the Caribbean would be asked to naturalize.
mm,
And back in the yeah, indeed. So back in the 70s, they've been asked to naturalize and pay what £1,400. Now, £1,400 back in those days is
mhm,
equivalent to what, about eight or nine
mhm,
thousand or more pounds
mhm,
in today's money,
mhm,
in
mhm.
order to, as it were, assert their Britishness. Oh my
Well, it's
gosh.
it's
Okay.
it goes
Mhm.
deeper than that because
Ah, go ahead.
really, this all began in 1655 when
Ah,
Jamaica was captured by Cromwell's navy, and they brought
yes.
Africans onto Jamaica and enslaved them to make wealth for the British Empire. You often hear people
Yes.
talking about, oh, their ancestors contributed and all the rest of it. Well, guess how long we were contributing without any wages? 300
Yes.
years. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
then tell us that, we're not part of it after we've been contributing to build roads, industries, institutions. We've all contributed to that. And
Hmm.
so, we're part of it. When we heard about Scotland's independence campaign, Scotland was saying, well, what about our proportion of the national wealth?
Absolutely.
I'm thinking, well,
Yes.
when we got independence, where was our proportion of the national wealth?
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
it's very, very deep.
Hmm.
Again, in 1833, when we had the
Hmm.
Emancipation Act,
Yes.
Parliament decided that they were going to buy us all
Hmm.
from the plantation owners. So we
Indeed.
actually belong to Parliament because they
Indeed. Yes.
forked out, 20 billion in that in today's money terms to purchase property from
Yes.
the enslavers.
The-
So we were classed as
yes.
property. We're these descendants from that property. And suddenly Parliament saying, well, you're not ours. Well, you paid the bill. It's there in the records.
Absolutely. Yep.
So
Up until
you can't,
2015, in fact, we were all contributing to the payment to
yes, to pay
the
for our
latter-day
own,
enslaver families. Yeah.
emancipation. And so it's very, very deep when they talk about nationality and belonging.
Hmm.
This country belongs to us. We paid for it in blood, sweat, and tears.
Absolutely.
Not,
Hmm.
not that we belong. It belongs to
Hmm.
us, is what I
Absolutely.
say. So yeah. So the 1948 Act said that we're all citizens of the United Kingdom and colonies.
Hmm. Hmm. And that was, again, and it was important for us to go through that particular dialogue to help the tens of thousands of people
Hmm.
understand the implications of this 1948 Act, okay, which is
Hmm.
important. But I'm also very conscious as we now canter through Parliament and its impact on us. I
Hmm.
just want to ask you to explain why there was an influx of bright, fit, ambitious young people from the Caribbean who came
Hmm.
to Britain in the 1950s and 60s. What was so attractive about Britain in 50s and 60s? Why were they coming here in this number? Yes, they were born British, but then, you know what? The Caribbean, beautiful scenery, food is in
Hmm.
abundance. Why leave that and come to Britain with smog and all the other stuff that's here? Why did they come? That brain drain from the
Hmm.
Caribbean and indeed Africa to Britain. Why? Can you explain
Yeah.
why?
So it's
Mhm.
it's 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 a bit complex in that there are a number of reasons and a number of forces that are causing people to migrate. Jamaica had always been a labor reserve in the Caribbean that built
Yeah.
the Panama Canal, that cut cane in
Yes.
Cuba, that went to
Yes.
America and worked
Yes.
during, you see difficulties at the moment with migrants in America where, the farms need them and they're deporting them all. But in the 50s and so on, Jamaicans used to do all that work.
It's
Um,
true.
and so there's a whole range of things Jamaicans used to do
Mhm.
in the Caribbean. But then after
Mhm.
the war, um, Britain hadn't invested very much in the Caribbean, it had always been taking out, and so after the war, there was a lot of poverty in the West Indies as a whole,
Yes. Yes.
and America had kind of restricted the numbers that could come to America, and then Britain being bombed out, as it were, they needed people to come back. So the soldiers who had fought in the war had gone back, and Britain then decided they needed them back. So they sent the MV Empire Windrush, which was a captured German cruiser, and they sent it back to the Caribbean to pick up these soldiers to bring them back to help rebuild Britain.
Can I ask
The
you to
captain.
pause there for a second? Can I ask you to pause there? There's a lot of information embedded in what you described, and you may be aware, of course, I did an earlier episode of the Motivator Show where we looked at the people from the Caribbean and Africa's involvement in the First World War, okay, and indeed the Second World War. And I must say, Anthony, that I discovered that I have two relatives who died in the First World War. Upon further investigation, then discovered that every family, virtually every family in Jamaica, had someone who was directly involved in the First World War. And indeed, the Second World War. Amazing number.
Yeah, well, I'll say it again. It goes deeper than that. I don't know if you've ever heard of the West India Regiment.
Indeed, yes. We have one of their forerunner leaders here on the Motivator Show. But continue, please. Yeah.
So in 1874, the West India Regiment was fighting in West Africa with the British to destroy the Ashanti Empire.
Indeed.
The Ashanti Empire was an empire that was built on enslaving Africans. And so you had enslaved people going back fighting the people who had sold them with the British. So Jamaicans and West Indians have been fighting with the British in their own regiment for a very long time. So that was pre the First World War, and they've fought in many campaigns. You can look at their record, and come the First World War, they fought with the British. Come the Second World War, they fought with the British again. So we've been part of Britain, part of the institution, history, part of the state for a very long time. There's still the West India.
If I hold you there, because that's again one of these historical facts which are not taught in schools here in Britain. And that's part of the information disconnect, and therefore the emotional disconnect that I encounter amongst many white British people who have forgotten the sacrifices made by people of the Caribbean and Africa in support of Britain, serving in those wars and dying on the battlefront and in large numbers. Why even today across Jamaica, every family will be able to trace a person, man or woman, who are part of those campaigns here in Europe. But they were excluded from the memorials. So if you go and see the names of the soldiers who died, soldiers from the Caribbean, soldiers from Africa were excluded deliberately. Yes. I can only describe British fascists who didn't want to acknowledge, who did refuse to acknowledge the contributions made by African people from the Caribbean and directly from Africa in fighting in campaigns against fascism, typically here in Europe. Now, of course, the First World War was about ending all wars, of course. It wasn't really fascism, but most certainly that is the case in the Second World War. I just wanted to add that in because there's there's that information and therefore emotional disconnect by people from the Caribbean in relation to the First and Second World War, or indeed to a prior military campaign which you've just indicated. And therefore, we played a significant role in ensuring that the great that's in Britain, we contributed to inserting the great in Britain? After you
Yes.
now. After you.
I'm always careful with names because sometimes it gives you
I hear you.
a
Yes.
focus where it could be
Mhm.
distracting. So yes,
Indeed.
fascists were part of the problem, but
Mm,
it goes much broader than that. It's just
mm,
a simple case of people forming a group and deciding that our group are going to take all the cream and your group
mm.
are not going to get any. And there's a lot more people other than fascists that do that kind of thing. And they tend to exclude other groups in order that they can keep the wealth for themselves and not
Yeah.
let those people who are part of the citizenship to enjoy their rights. I mean, it happens with class status, so it's not just
Indeed.
between black and white; it's
Yes.
between classes as well, where one
Quite right.
class decides that they're going to make sure that they keep the wealth for themselves, and the other class they're going to exclude them and keep them down. And
Happening to this day. Happening to this
have
day.
done,
Yes. Mm,
what we
mm,
have done is joined forces with the working
yes.
class and said, look,
Yes.
let's make sure that we get justice. Let's make sure we get good employment rights. Let's make sure that, basically what the Labour Party is about,
There
that,
you go.
that came about to, defend the rights
Absolutely.
of workers and have tried
Absolutely.
to promote equality and that sort of thing. So it's a
Mm.
much broader issue than necessarily
I agree.
fascism
I
or
agree. I
racism
agree.
or whatever the case might be.
Okay. But my question, of course, is what was attractive about Britain? Why these
Mm.
bright, fit, ambitious young people
Yeah.
came from the Britain from the wonderful life in the Caribbean in the 50s and
So
60s
yeah.
en
So
masse.
so
Why did that happen?
so what I was saying was that the Empire Windrush was sent. The captain decided that okay, he's got the troops, but there's still some more places. So he sold cheap tickets, and that created a wave. Now people had been coming to Britain back and forth for decades before
Yes.
the empire. We shouldn't, because you mentioned the First World War.
Mhm.
They were coming backwards and forwards with Britain. So our history with Britain doesn't start with Windrush. It
Indeed.
goes
Well
way
said.
back, as I say, to 1655.
Mhm.
But that particular ship caused a wave of people coming on board, and there was a big fanfare when it landed at Tilbury Docks, and we've all seen the scenes with
Yes.
Calypsonian Lord Kitchener singing
Yes.
"London, this is the place." So it
Oh
was
God, he's singing now. Go on, give us a bit more of that. Give us a bit more of that. Come on, Anthony.
it
Don't be shy.
promoted it promoted the arrival of the ship,
Uh-huh.
and so on the 22nd of June, 1948, we have what we call now Windrush Day, marking the arrival of that ship. Um,
Yes,
but then, so Britain was making the call for people to come and provide labour.
indeed.
Meanwhile, their own people were going in the opposite direction because
Mm.
you had what was called the £10 POMs. So people could get
Oh
£10
yes,
and
go to
migrate to
Australia. Yes,
Australia.
yeah.
So,
Forgive me. Yes,
so
yes.
as I say, the situation is complex.
Mhm.
So there's all those issues. There's poverty in the West Indies. There's the pull factor from Britain to say that
Yes,
they needed workers to come and help rebuild. Enoch Powell was busy trying to recruit
yes,
nurses for the NHS and so on.
yes.
So
My,
this is
my
what I say.
father met him,
It's
Anthony.
very
My father
complicated.
met him. Yeah, my father met him. He
Okay.
encouraged Enoch Powell. Yes, Enoch Powell encouraged my father to come to Britain. For
Right.
heaven's sake.
There you go.
Okay. Hey, now Enoch Powell. Again, this interview will be re-edited.
Mhm.
A quick bio of Enoch Powell and why he's a notorious British politician will be on screen to a further explanation. But continue, Anthony. I don't want to digress.
Yes.
Mhm,
So,
mhm,
but when we came,
mhm.
we experienced a hostile environment. In
Yeah.
that, they'd put up signs: no dogs, no blacks, no Irish. People found it difficult to rent places. some of the jobs, we were discriminated against in. And there was also issues around the closed shop and trade unionism.
Yes.
A lot of black workers were excluded from being members of the trade
Trade
union.
unions.
And
That's
because of the
right.
closed shop situation, meaning that, if you didn't belong to the union, you couldn't get a
You
job
can't
in
work.
that in that
Yes.
workplace, in that company.
Mm.
And there was a famous case from one of our elders in Manchester called Beresford Edwards. He took his union,
Yes.
SOGAT, to court, and there was a
Yes.
famous declaration by Lord Denning, who was Master of the Rolls at the time, and he declared that a man had a right to work, and the union had
Absolutely.
conspired to make him lose his membership and lose his job, but they upheld, Mr. Edwards's claim, and this went
Yes.
all around the world, and he was paid compensation for that. So this compensation business has started quite a while ago,
Yeah.
and anyway, so people came because of the pull factors, Britain wanting workers to come and help rebuild the country. My dad
Yes.
came. Your dad
Yes.
came, and
Yes.
many of our families came at that time,
Mm-hmm.
which would have
Mm-hmm.
been just like people moving from Scotland or Ireland,
Yes.
to come and do work. We
Yes.
didn't
This is
have
right.
those restrictions,
No.
like they
No.
don't have restrictions between Scotland and England or Ireland and
Mm-hmm.
England.
That's
We
right.
didn't have restrictions between Jamaica and England because we were all citizens of the
Britain.
United
Or they
Kingdom
were
of
born
Course.
British.
Yeah,
Yes, we were
but
born
then,
British. Well,
but
yeah.
then all the fun started, where people.
Can I, before we get to the fun, I did want to just make sure. So we're now at the point at which the British government, both Labour and Conservative government,
Hmm.
it targeted the Caribbean, targeted
Hmm.
particularly West Africa,
Hmm.
to encourage able men and women to come to Britain to work,
Yes.
to
Yes.
fill those many and growing number of vacancies, even
Hmm.
though at the time Britain had
Hmm.
that policy, as you say, £10 poms, encouraging people to families to go and emigrate to Australia. So I
Yeah.
recall a family when I was here, when I was a child, they were leaving to
Hmm.
go to Australia, and I couldn't understand. My best friend, his name was Andrew at the time, and another girl, Rebecca, another one of my friends, and both their families lived on the same street, were
Hmm.
emigrating to Australia. It
Hmm.
made no sense. And when I asked, why are you going to Australia? It said, looked like a long far away. And they said, well, my dad said it'd be better for us. I said, wow.
Yes.
And it
Well,
made no
if
sense.
what I imagine now is
Mhm.
that Australia had lost a lot of people in the war as well. So
Yeah.
if you remember, the Anzacs and the whole Gallipoli
Yes,
debacle,
that's right.
where,
Yes,
you know
that's true.
they'd been slaughtered on the beaches. A lot of the men
Yes,
had been killed, and
yes.
so and you know Britain probably thought, well, we need to replenish. Strategically important to replenish their
Hmm.
population.
Yes.
And so it was just a case of musical chairs with the empire, wasn't it? So people moved
Well,
out to
hold
to
on, Anthony.
Australia,
You've been
and
very
then
kind to
people were
them.
brought in from the Caribbean
Yeah, but hold on,
to
Anthony.
fill up.
Hold on. You've been very kind. Of course, what was notable about that £10 pom policy was that Britain would only finance white families to go to
Yes,
Australia.
yes.
Okay,
And
it was
at that
again,
time, Australia had
mm,
very racist laws to
indeed. Hmm.
stop, you know, black people going to Australia. I mean, they've changed it
Mm.
now, but
Well,
that it's, there's a legacy around the empire of black people being restricted and so on,
hmm,
and
hmm,
so this is where we come to the sweeping restrictions that we started to have, because
yes,
um, as we started to settle in and live here, um, the
it
people were
changes. In
started
fact, let
to
me ask this question of you. Let me ask this question of you.
mm,
Please explain how the countries that gain so-called, I'm using that term for now, so-called independence, affected citizenship status of Caribbean people, indeed West African people, already settled in Britain. Okay, there we are.
So,
A whole
as I
family,
was
like my
saying,
own family, your family, have come over,
yeah, I'll
and
give you the
now,
example. I'll give you the example of my dad and your
aha,
dad.
indeed,
So, this is where I was saying, as the fun starts, everybody thought it was a great thing that Jamaica was getting its independence, Ghana was getting its independence, Trinidad was getting its independence. They're all cheering, great, happy. But what they weren't telling you was that you were losing citizenship of the United Kingdom and colonist status. So your dad
mhm,
living here, one day he was British, the same as his
yes,
neighbour, and the next
yes,
day he wasn't.
yep,
Quite
they
different
take it
from
away
his
from him.
neighbour, and similar
Yes.
to my dad. And that meant that when they passed the 1971 Immigration Act, your dad and my dad and
Hmm.
me became
Indeed.
subject to immigration law because we weren't
Indeed.
British anymore. So
Right.
the Immigration Act only applies to foreigners.
Hmm.
So after these hundreds of years, suddenly we were foreigners in our own country
Was
because
that
Britain
legal
was our
though?
country.
But was that legal under international law anyway? Could they just simply take away your
Yes,
nationality?
yes, because international
Mhm.
law says that you're
Okay.
not allowed to make a person stateless.
Mhm.
But guess what? They had made you Jamaican, or they'd made you Trinidadian, or they'd made you Ghanaian.
Chinese. Yep.
So
Right.
it
Indeed.
wasn't
Hmm. Hmm.
illegal, and
Hmm.
that's the key.
Hmm.
Now, what it meant that they could put restrictions on people who before had had all the rights to be here. And
Yes.
what
Yes.
happened was the restrictions became greater and greater and greater
Yes.
over time
Yes. Yes.
until 2014 and our good
Hmm.
friend Theresa May, who said,
Yes.
look, we've got too many immigrants here, and some of them need to go home. So she made these go home vans drive
Hmm.
around these areas with neighbors saying, go home.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah. She then
Yep.
said,
She
oh,
did.
well, we're going to make a hostile environment so
Yep.
that, it's very difficult for
Can I just ask
immigrants.
you to pause for a second? I want you
Mm,
to hear Theresa May's words. Okay.
mm.
Let's hope we can hear it well enough. But anyway, there we go. Hopefully, he can. Mhm. Mhm. Right. You heard that, huh?
No, I didn't. We haven't heard it yet. You've heard it,
Oh, you
but we
didn't hear
haven't.
it. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, right. Okay, I'll have to do it another way in that case. And let me do it another way. I'm really sorry. Let me try it another way because it's that was a particularly important point she made at the end. I'm going to play it one more time, and as I said, the final edited version of this will become apparent to you all. I'm now going to try one other way of doing this, but hopefully this will work without any hassle. If not, I'm going to ask you to keep talking and I'll get this set up for you. Keep talking. So,
Yes.
the hostile environment. Mhm. Oh, in fact, there we go. I think we can play it now. I think we can play it. There we go.
Still can't hear.
You still can't hear it. Oh,
Yeah.
all right. I do apologize. In that case, I'll stop that. I will stop it, and we will
It's
not
muted.
do that.
That's why. Is it muted?
It's muted. Why is it muted? Let me take off the mute. This is live, people, so forgive us. Why is it muted? I can hear it very loud in my headset, but never mind. I won't do this. Don't you worry. I
Yeah.
will.
Yeah, that was
I
where
won't
she
do
was apologizing to the Caribbean heads of government
it.
after
Correct. That's right.
The Windrush Scandal broke, and Britain became very
Yes.
embarrassed.
And they should be.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can adjust this. So I'm just making sure I can't. I'll stop that for now. I'll stop
Yeah.
that and take it off. Yep. Sorry about that. There we go. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
So I will.
she did.
In the re-edited version, it will be you will be able to hear and see Theresa May make the public apology at the
Yes.
at the Commonwealth heads of government meetings. Sorry, over to you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was saying that she'd actually, prior to all of this in 2014, had this campaign because she was Home Secretary at the time, before she became Prime Minister. She was making it more hostile for people in the UK. And so she made new laws that said that tightened the situation for people who were immigrants. So if you needed to go to your doctors, you had to show that you had the legal status to be here.
Yes.
If you needed to get a bank account, driver's license, if you wanted to continue in your job, say people changed jobs. When they went to the new job, the employers would be asking them, okay, well, let's see your passport and let's see that you've got the right to work here. Now, remember, when people came here and they came here as citizens of the United Kingdom and colonies, and then they became independent, all those old black passports that they had became invalid. Right. They're absolutely useless.
Yes.
They don't prove that you have the legal right, the status to be in the country.
Yes.
What the government did is made another declaration in the 1971 Immigration Act that said everybody who had come under that invitation had indefinite leave to remain.
That's right. Yep.
ILR, indefinite leave to remain. Yes. But if you left the country for more than 2 years, you lost that status.
Yes.
Now, how unfair is that?
Indeed.
Do British lose their right to be British or come back when they leave the country? No. But suddenly that law was able to be imposed. Yes. New laws. Now, when they gave them this ILR status, no documents were given. It was just declared in Parliament.
Indeed,
in the law.
Yes. That's right.
Now, Theresa May passing this new law was saying that you needed documents to keep your job. You needed documents to see your doctor. And so when people were confronted with that, they said, but we never got any documents when, you took away our status and gave us independent and you made us independent and gave us indefinite leave to live here. You never gave us any documents. And then this whole thing in Parliament came up, well, maybe if we looked at their landing cards, we could prove that, they came over. But, that's a red herring. The Home Office can find you or find out how long you've been in the country by various means and ways. We have means. They can check your HMRC record. You give them your national insurance number, and they can check to see all the tax you've been paying. So they'll know that you've been here straight away. So that you don't need landing cards. So if anybody believes, and this is really important, that they don't have the right documentation, then they need to come forward and get it, because the scheme is still in place and you can prevent problems happening to generations further down the line. And we have a number of organizations around the country. Preston Windrush is one of them. They have what we call an advocacy charter that they
Yes.
ask people to support, because we want people getting their status to be something that's talked about,
Yes.
that's done regularly within our community, because there's so many thousands of people who are not
Yes.
aware. Preston Windrush
Indeed.
started because a 12-year-old girl wanted to go on holiday to Spain, and she was told she wasn't British, and she was shocked. 12, wasn't British.
Yeah.
She had been born here. Her mother had been born here, but her grandmother had come from St. Vincent in the
Yes.
70s. And St. Vincent got its independence, and you know the story. And then it comes down. So it affects the generations. So don't think it's those people who are nicely dressed coming off the boat that, that are, only them are affected. Their descendants too are affected by these changes to immigration law. And the one that really bit a lot of people were the ones that Theresa May made. The one that bit me was the 71 Immigration Act that said that if you've been out of the country for more than 2 years, then you'd lose your status. I'd gone back to Jamaica because my dad had gone back, and I'd stayed there for 4 years. And then when I came back again, I went to college. But then when I wanted to go to university, I wrote to the Home Office, and they told me, "Oh, hang on a minute, you're an illegal immigrant now. You're
Can you
going to have
imagine?
to
Huh?
go to
Oh,
Manchester Airport to be deported." And I said,
oh
"What?"
my gosh.
And the community rallied. We went to the West
Yes.
Indian Centre. That same Barry Edwards that I was talking about,
Yes.
Professor Gus John, they mobilised the
Yes.
community across Manchester
Absolutely.
and across the country, and we challenged
Yes.
Margaret Thatcher, and
Yes.
she decided that I could stay. So I'm still here to tell the tale. But
Can I just, can I
the
now,
other
if I
thing,
may? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah,
I was going
so,
to move
but
us on, you see, to the Labour government now. But
yeah.
go ahead.
So,
Go ahead.
but throughout the decades,
Mhm.
we all heard about Joy Gordon and how she was killed
Yes.
by immigration officers.
Yes.
But throughout the decades, people have been quietly deported
Yes.
under those laws.
Yes.
But when the 2014 Act came in, and it was it was bringing the border into your doctors, into your bank, into your employer. You had to show your passport. Usually only show your passport at the border, but now
Yes.
internally, this is what was happening. And so it caught many more people. And so it started to come out in the media. Amelia Gentleman from The Guardian published a lot of stories. And then this is where it all got exposed.
Okay. Thank you for that, because that's the Theresa May era. But of course, we now have a new government, and a government that made promises. And I want to put this question to you. And this is, I want to say this because I am supportive of the government we now have. It's got to be better than what we had previously. But what promises did the Labour government make to the Windrush pioneers and their descendants prior to the Labour gaining power in 2024? What were the promises that were made?
Okay, let's start with the promises of the previous government, and you can see the context. So we had what we call the Amber Rudd statement. So Amber Rudd was the Home Secretary at the time, who was in the hot seat, and David Lammy made his speech in Parliament, saying how many people have you deported? It's your department. And Amber Rudd had to resign because of all this hoo-ha. But she had said that, people had gone abroad. They were British in all but legal status, and that they would be able to come back, and those people who had been caught up, they would get their citizenship status back, or indefinite leave to remain, whatever they were entitled to. The government would do that, and the government then wouldn't charge them. So my citizenship was restored. My British citizenship was restored within 3 weeks of me applying. After 35 years of being under the radar, they said, "Well, here's your citizenship back." But and it irks me to this day, they gave me a naturalization certificate. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, he only nationalised foreigners. But anyway, I've had to let that be because I want to fight other battles before I fight that one. So, so that was the status that was the level that Amber Rudd had set. But the schemes were not being properly administered. So the compensation scheme, there were a lot of delay. You might have heard stories about people having to wait 2 years and so on. Right. There were a lot of teething troubles when it was being set up, and those stories have gone abroad, and people have been reluctant to come forward. But a lot of that now, through the Windrush Stakeholders Advisory Group, Home Office Stakeholders Advisory Group that I belong to, a lot of people around the country formed groups, one of which is Windrush Defenders. We also have the Windrush National Organisation. Yes. And, we've been making representations to the government. Look, you need to change this. You need to improve it this way. You need to improve it that way, and so on. And so the Wendy Williams Lessons Learned Review looked at what the Home Office had been doing and said, okay, there are 30 recommendations that need to be made, that she made. And the Home Office accepted all of them, apologized, we were going to do it. But then, a couple of years on, they started to backtrack and renege on these agreements. So 3 of them, the Home Office said, oh, well, we're not going to go ahead with. But this Labour government said, we think those 3 needs to be honoured as well. So before the election, the Labour government pledged that they would honour all the recommendations of Wendy Williams, including the 3. So when they came into office, they fulfilled that pledge. They
Can I ask you just to pause just for a moment there, and thank you, because before we get, I just want to play a short piece, which is the focus around Sir Keir Starmer. Okay, I just want to play a short piece just to set the context for what you're about to say, and it is part of the intro video, so it gives it a moment, but it will help us all to fully appreciate what is actually being said. Here we go. And assuming I can get this to work. It's one of those days today. The gremlins have got into the machines, never mind. But again, in the edited version, I will play it. And what it will actually quote is what Keir Starmer actually said prior to the election. There we go. Over to you, Anthony. Whatever reason, it's not going to work.
Yeah. So the government said, they were going to bring back those 3 recommendations. So one of them was about this Windrush unit that they had in the Home Office. The Windrush unit was responsible for looking at how all the 30 recommendations were being implemented. So, and part of all of that was to change the culture within the Home Office. So if you take away the unit that's supposed to be overseeing and pushing that, then, you're not going to get the changes that you need in the Home Office. So the government's brought that back, and that's been set up. They also said that this issue about reconciliation, they brought that back as well. So they've started discussions as to what does reconciliation look like. We've wronged you, but how do we reach reconciliation? And so there was a meeting in London at City Hall where the deputy leader of London, Debbie Bernard, I think, she hosted that alongside Simon Malhotra and MP. She was the Home Office minister at the time,
Yes.
And also Baroness Doreen Lawrence.
Yes.
So, and about a couple of hundred people attended, and it started a discussion about what reconciliation could look like.
Should look like.
And
Okay.
people made their views. And so that was another thing. And then in terms of support for groups supporting people from the Caribbean or other places who had been
Yes.
impacted,
Right.
the government pledged £1.5 million
Mm-hmm.
because they'd set these schemes in place, had all
Mm-hmm.
these lengthy, complicated forms, and it was supposedly for elderly people. And
That's
so
right.
we thought,
Mm-hmm.
hang on a minute,
Mm-hmm.
someone's trying one here, because
Mm-hmm.
how are people going to wade through these forms and stuff? So we had volunteered and set up these groups to help people, as they'd done in
Yes.
the 80s with the Nationality Act that came in 1981. I remember people, rallying and helping others, helping each other. We
Yes.
tend to do that from the Caribbean. So
Camaraderie. Yep. Absolutely.
inform
That's
groups
right.
and start help. A bit like what's happening with the hurricane at the moment. Every man and his
Mm.
dog is filling a barrel and sending it to
Absolutely.
Jamaica.
Absolutely.
But everybody rallied round, in different parts of the country, in Birmingham, in Preston, in Manchester, in London, and formed
Mm-hmm.
these groups to help people with these forms, because the government hadn't put any mechanisms in place to support people with these forms. But
Right.
now the new government, Labour government, was saying,
Okay.
we will provide £1.5 million to help um, uh, these groups who'd been doing it
Did they?
voluntarily.
But did they do so? Did they do so? Did
Yeah,
the
they've
government
done
do
so,
so?
and
They
some
kept
groups
the
have applied
promise.
and
Good. Good.
got
Mm-hmm.
supported. So that was
Right.
the third part of the thing that
Mm.
they did to sort of uh, um, get back on track with the recommendations.
Okay.
They
Mm-hmm.
also said that they would look at one of the recommendations, recommendation 21, calls on the government to look at the immigration laws and simplify them.
Indeed.
And this is
Yes.
where I came in and I pointed to it and said, "Oh, what are you doing about that? How
Uh-huh.
about my Windrush Act?" And we've been we've been lobbying them about that, and we got a very favourable response from Seaman Malhotra
Okay,
MP.
hold on. Sorry, Andy, you jumped forward to the Windrush Act, your proposal. Can I ask you just to elaborate in simple terms so all, as many of the audience can understand, why, in principle, a Windrush Act and not simply a regulatory change in Parliament? Why a Windrush Act? Explain why.
Well, in media, Windrush has become a term that's associated with the migration of African Caribbeans. I know that the Windrush scheme is for anyone in the world who came
Indeed.
from any of the countries, China, the United States. You don't have to be a part of the Commonwealth, but you have to have come here before the 31st of January 1988. And if you
Yes.
haven't got documents to prove your lawful status and you apply to the Windrush scheme and you meet certain criteria, they will give you those documents at no charge. It could be that you came before 1973 as part of
Hmm.
what's called the Windrush Generation. So those who came
Yes.
before the 1st of January 1973, the government calls them the Windrush Generation. You might call yourself
Yes.
something else, and you're free to, but that's what the
I
government's
don't
calling you.
call myself the Windrush Generation because that's, there was only one vessel of many. And indeed, my parents came over on an aeroplane. They didn't come over
Yeah,
on a boat.
yeah.
But anyway,
But
need I say more? Keep
so
going.
in terms of referencing the group
Hmm.
and putting in place policies to address the complaints and the
Yeah.
issues, they
Yeah.
use that phrase so that they can communicate with each
Understood.
other about what they are doing. And you don't have to use that phrase, but they do amongst the government departments. Anyway,
Mhm.
so if you've come here before the 1st of January 1973, then possibly because you haven't registered or done anything, you still got your black passport in the drawer. You might not have registered as a citizen. And if you apply to the Windrush scheme, the government will give you your citizenship free of charge, and that will save you, 1,000,
Yes.
however many hundreds it is
Yes.
now.
Yes.
And so that's a good thing. And if you have suffered detriment, so if you've
Yes.
lost your job, or
Mm.
you've been blocked from returning to the country, or you didn't have the bank account, or you couldn't see your doctor, or there's a whole 12
Okay.
heads of loss that you can have, or it's impacted your life in a very difficult way, caused you trauma and so on. Then the government will compensate you for that. You need
Mhm.
to complete your application form for the
Yes.
Windrush compensation scheme. And we and other organisations like Preston Windrush, like Windrush National Organisation, will help you with those forms. And the government has funded organisations to help take you through those forms. But with us,
Uh,
we
uh,
think
uh, yeah,
we need to go
I'm
on.
bound to ask though. Yes, I'm bound to ask and continue to ask you. So, in your opinion, has the new Labour government honoured its promises to the Windrush generations and its descendants? Have they honoured the electoral promises, in your opinion?
Uh, in my opinion, I'd give them, say, 7 out of 10. In
All
in
right.
in many ways, they've done certain things, but then I feel at the moment in the current climate, I mentioned earlier that we had a very positive response from Sumo Hoptra. That was up to the summer, since the conference season, and the hoo-ha about immigration, and you've got
Right.
reform competing, and the
Yes.
conservatives throwing in, it seems to be a competition as to who can be meanest to immigrants, and that's
Indeed.
just
Indeed.
changed the
Mm.
environment. And so it's become what I called not a hostile environment, but a toxic environment. It's very toxic at the moment. And
Oh
a lot
wow.
of people who um, were traumatized by what happened during the Windrush Scandal hear these things,
Hmm.
that the government is going to take away citizenship and deport them, and they're going to make it harder to get uh, indefinite leave to remain. People hear all that. They don't know whether it applies to them, but that
Uh-huh. Right.
environment causes them
Yes.
to be stressed and
Yes.
traumatized all over.
Yes.
So, in terms of some of the points that they said they would do,
Mhm.
um, they've done, but then
Okay.
the
Right.
spirit of the Windrush scheme is not being adhered to, because what caused it was the hostile environment, and now you've become part of a toxic environment. I don't think
Mhm.
that's helpful at all. So they lose a lot of points for me for that.
Okay.
The discussions with the changes in legislation,
Mhm.
again, that's been tough going. Diane Abbott, I sympathise with her a lot for the traumas that she's gone through.
Mhm.
But I asked her at a meeting in Parliament, okay, you were there championing the cause of the Windrush Generation when these legislations were being passed. You were warning Theresa May that it would cause problems, and she ignored you, and she still legislated, and what you warned about happened. Now that Labour's got such a huge majority in Parliament, are you repealing those laws and making it good now for the Windrush Generation? And the answer was no. But she did take time to explain the political environment, and that
Mhm.
she felt that the Labour government were trying to appear reform light. I don't know if you remember the phrase "conservative light." Well,
Okay.
now they're trying
I'm
to.
not going to. Hold on a second. I'm not going to characterise the Labour government as being reform light. They most
Well,
certainly,
basically,
if I may, if I may, I'm not going to characterise them here as being reform light, but I am going to agree with you that some comments have been left one feeling uncomfortable with some of the language being used by some of the leaders of the party. I'm
Yes.
going to agree with that. And
Yeah.
if I may, because I'm really focused on the promises, and if for the large part they've kept the promises, but there's still more work to do. Are you any closer, nevertheless, particularly if there's been changes in the Home Office and so on, closer to securing a Windrush Act, which, from a legal point of view, makes perfect sense. But are you any closer, do you believe?
Yes, is the answer
Okay.
to that. Now, the reason I say yes is because despite the toxic environment, you do find people who are just golden. And after
Yes.
7 years of campaigning,
Yes.
I met with Helen Hayes.
Oh, yes. The outstanding Helen Hayes, a Labour member of Parliament here in my borough of Southwark, in fact. Go ahead.
Yes.
Mhm.
So she's the MP for Dulwich and Northwood. I call her
That's
the
right.
MP for Windrush Square.
Well, indeed, which includes Brixton, of course. That's Brixton.
Yes,
But
yes, yes.
her
So
constituency straddles two boroughs, both Southwark
yes,
and Lambeth. Yeah.
so you can see she has a large constituency group that this
Absolutely.
affects. So she clearly has
Yes.
an interest in this whole
Yes.
issue, and she had
Yeah.
organised a Windrush Day debate in Parliament,
Yes. She did.
and she reached out and decided that she would have a look at what the Windrush Act was about, and
Mm-hmm.
she then has taken it on to um, see how it can be implemented by
Great.
writing
Yes.
to the House of Commons Library, because there could be other legislation, in place that, as you say,
Mm-hmm.
not called the Windrush Act, but they could have similar effects. So she's
Yes.
doing her research, but uh, actually, we've got an MP now who is looking
Absolutely.
at how this could be taken forward, and that for me is a huge breakthrough, because I felt like the voice crying in the wilderness.
No, never. That was never the case, Anthony. And I would say big thumbs up to Helen
Yes,
Hayes MP. Big thumbs
yeah,
up to Helen Hayes. Well
but
done.
it's
Well
early
done.
days yet. We're
Mm-hmm.
doing the research, and we're going to find out how we can now, um, structurally get this in place. And the effects
Brilliant.
of the Windrush Act would be
Mm-hmm.
that it would bring into law Amber Rudd's statement, in effect. That Amber Rudd said
Yes.
that they are British in all but legal status. Now, when we took
Well
the home,
said. Yes,
when we took
absolutely.
when we
Absolutely.
took the Home Office to the High
Mm-hmm.
Court,
Mm-hmm.
we had a very helpful judge, Judge Fordham, and he gave us a 19-page judgment. And in it, he identified Schedule 1 of the British Nationality Act 1981. And that has all the hurdles that people have to jump through. So if they've been out of the country for more than 2 years, that's a hurdle.
Right.
If they have to pay a fee, that's a hurdle.
Yeah.
If they've committed offences while they were growing up, that's a
Yes.
that's a hurdle.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
what we now say is that British people don't have to face that. Why should we? So if we're
Well said.
British,
Yes.
in
Yes.
then we need the
All that
legal
means.
status, and the legal status we need is to not be subject to immigration law. Immigration law is super complex, and
Yes.
people are trying to figure out how they can simplify and resolve this. What the Windrush Act does is it cuts through all that and says, forget about these immigration laws. Immigration laws only apply to foreigners. These are not
Mm.
foreigners. These are British
No.
people with
British.
legal status.
Yes.
So let's give them
Yes.
the legal status in law, or
Well
make it
said,
easy to
Anthony.
get that British
Well said,
status in
Anthony.
law. And so
Let's.
Judge
Mhm.
Fordham has helped us cut through
Mhm.
all of the fog and
Yeah.
focused on the key issue. And this
Mhm.
is where I'm hoping that it's a simplified way of addressing a huge problem. Now, when we deal with that, what I see is that people then will be able to come forward easier to get their status
Yes.
restored. it would make a lot of the complications with the compensation go away as well.
Yes.
I'm not saying
Yes.
it'll solve everything, but a big chunk of it will be dealt with, and I think that's doing my bit
Okay.
for this whole thing.
We're all agreeing with you, Anthony, and most certainly we want to encourage other MPs, indeed local
Mm,
councillors, to take up the campaign. You
yes.
may have sort of pre-prepared letters and so on to share with
Hmm.
MPs and councillors so that we can be a part of that lobbying of government to ensure that the just rights of the Windrush generation and their descendants are upheld in law through the Windrush Act. It makes
Yeah.
absolutely perfect sense. So for you, what are the next steps? What are the next steps for you?
Well, as you say, it's to really get more people aware. One,
Yes.
that, their children themselves and their grandchildren could still be at risk of
Yes.
suffering some of the things that have happened, and to get
Hmm.
that status sorted out. And two,
Hmm.
to protect future generations by
Hmm.
having a law change. So my next step is to go around the country, having meetings,
Hmm.
saying to people that these are the issues. They may not have been explained in that way,
Hmm.
because not many people have gone to the High Court and got a High Court judge to tell them what the problem is. But he's
Indeed.
now done that.
Indeed.
This is the
Yes.
issue. I'm telling MPs, I'm telling as many people as I can that this is what needs to be done. It's not a massive thing. And, it could affect up to 3,000 people who are living in the
Yes.
UK at the
Yes.
moment, who are in limbo because, you know, the Home Office has published statistics of people who have been refused from
Hmm.
the Windrush scheme, and that is
Right.
about 3,000 people. And it could
Right.
be those are people that could benefit from this new Windrush Act. And
Right.
so their children then will be able to go to universities and so on. And so it'll
Yes.
make our community much more cohesive. And so we
Hmm.
put this under what we call community cohesion, because these laws have divided us and broken up our
Right.
families and so on. And so
Yes.
we want to see how we can repair the harm that's been done there.
And can I ask you, in the sort of closing minutes, I know that uh, you have, as part of your organization, WD Legal, you've been, what do you call it, the Burning Spaces
The
project?
burning work, glad you mentioned
Work in
that.
work, forgive
So
me. Yes, go
Burning
ahead.
Work, the younger generation helped put that together, because
Mhm,
we said, okay, these have been our experiences. This is how we've tried to deal with them. Um, what do you make of it in your time? So they've given a
mhm,
framework, they call it Burning Work, and it's got 5
mhm,
themes. Community
mhm.
cohesion, as I've mentioned, so all the issues
Yes.
that have come up with regards to the immigration issues and the compensation, and but
Mhm.
also some of the cultural issues are
Okay.
community centres. What
Yes.
the Windrush Generation came and established those. Many of them are of the age where they can't operate them. How are we going to get those repurposed to deliver things for today? And what we're saying is that burning work is a strategy that all of these organisations could adopt, because
Hmm.
deal
Hmm.
with things that they traditionally deal with anyway. So criminal justice issues, when people used to have a problem, they used to go to their centres and get help. So
Yes. Yes.
we're looking at the disparities in criminal justice. Why are there
Right.
so many people from the black community going down what we call the
Yes.
school to prison pipeline? There's
Indeed.
also
Indeed.
education. Why are there so much disparities in education? We're bottom of the league in terms of achievement into of
Mm.
3 A levels to
Hmm.
go on to higher education, and we know that's how we become part of the middle class that
Indeed.
gets
Yes.
wealthy. We want to be in there. We don't want to be excluded out of that. So why are
Absolutely.
our youngsters being kept out of that
Mhm,
through the way the education system operates? So we want to bring about changes there, whether it's through Saturday schools or changes in the curriculum that reflects more about our heritage and so on.
mhm,
Then there's the whole issue about health. There's lots of
Yes.
disparities in health. We want to see how
Yes.
those disparities could be reduced. And there's
Yes.
work. So there's lots of disparities going on in people being employed, how they progress through employment, and so on. And the
Yes.
government publishes a lot of these details, these data, on what they call ethnic facts. They've got this ethnic facts
Indeed.
website. So
That's right.
the information is all there. And we
Yes.
asked the Minister Moore-Hopcher, to meet with us to explain to her about how burning work works and why the legislation would be appropriate, and how organizations and asked how the government is using its own data
Right.
to inform policy
Great.
to reduce these
Absolutely.
disparities.
Yes.
And they couldn't tell us
Absolutely.
very much because obviously
Indeed.
it's all new to them. And we knew that, but we're trying to bring them along.
Okay.
And we're planning a conference in March, 27th of March, where
Okay.
government departments who produce this data, we plan to meet with them, meet with local authorities, meet with the community organisations under what we're
Right.
calling Burning Work 2.0, to look at how we
Excellent.
can create
Yes. Yes.
what we call a continuous improvement plan for the community. So we're looking at this data, we're looking at create what we call a benchmark to say, okay, this is the level that we're starting at now. In 5 years' time, what do we want it to look like? Okay, we're an
Absolutely.
organisation, what policies can we bring in place to reduce these disparities across the board? And can we meet again next year to see how we're doing? And, we just want to start off on that basic framework level
Yes.
and build it
Yes.
up over the years. But we feel that, if nobody's doing anything about it, then it's just going to stay the way it is.
Absolutely.
And, we
Absolutely.
came here to build. So we're going to
Yes.
build
Yes. Yes.
a
I
better
like that.
future.
And you might want to send some more details about the Burning Works project and your progression. And I'll include it as part of the commentary for the final re-edited version of this interview. But as we're now coming to a close, what are your closing words for the Motivator Show audience? What is your closing words, your wise words?
Share this information with your neighbours, with your family, with your friends about the Windrush scheme, about the Windrush compensation scheme, about burning work. In particular, write to your MP. We have been
Yes.
given the right to do that, and we've seen what
Yes.
happens when we don't use that right. They
Mhm.
put us in detention and deport us. So
That's right.
you've got to keep engaging with your MP so that when new laws or debates come up that are a toxic environment, he will know, oh gosh, I've got to go and face that constituent again who won't like this. So I'll make sure that it's not happening. And
Yes.
we have a website, wdlegal.co.uk.
Yes. Yes.
If you want to get more information or you want to support our work, volunteer, make a donation, you can go to that website and just email us, and we will be in touch.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And I want to thank you for all your work. I know this consumed all of your attention. Okay, no, and we are all appreciative. I want to encourage the audience. I want to encourage other MPs, other councillors to get involved. You all just need to provide us with the materials so that we can continue to lobby government for one, the Windrush Act, two, a fair compensation scheme, and three, to take note of the burning work and its implication for Britain. And what we want to see is we agree with you. We want to see material change the conditions of those who've made, in many cases, the ultimate sacrifice, but have devoted their entire life to Britain, paid taxes, and have devoted their entire life to Britain. It is quite reasonable to expect the Crown, the King, the government, the peoples of Britain to reciprocate by treating them fairly. Thank you. Thank you, Anthony.
So I just say that website again. So it's www.wdlegal.co.uk, Or you can have my number.
Yep.
It's 07392
Yep.
399 040. So
Thank
if
you.
you've got a difficulty with your status,
Hmm.
message me. If you want to volunteer, if you want to donate, message me and we will respond.
That's right. Go via your website at www.wdlegal.co.uk. There's a contact page on your website. A note. They can, of course, contact you. There's on the screen. And as I say again, in the re-edited version of this interview, even more information will be available to the audience. I would just say thank you very much, Anthony, for what was a truly inspiring dialogue you've had with us. There is great optimism for your work and indeed the current government, despite the government's current. I'm not going to go with the characterization. I'm not going to go with that. There are. I'm not going with that. But I accept that some of the language we're hearing is unsettling, and I'd say with you that the Prime Minister and other ministers need to always qualify their words that it does not apply to the Windrush generation and their descendants. I think it is really important to get that to have it distinguished. I'm sure that members of other parties, even those that Labour have got in their sights, would even agree with that statement. But we'll wait to see. Maybe that's a question you can put to other party leaders to
We
ensure
will.
that is the case.
We
Yeah,
get the
why not? Why not?
opportunity, we
Okay.
will.
Okay. But we'll get you back after your meeting in March just
Yes.
to provide a further update of progress made to date. But I want to compliment you on your dedication to the community. So I'm going to clap as per usual. There we go. Oh, is that working? Oh, nothing's working today. Oh, it is. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good day to you, Anthony. Good day to you. Thank
you.
Pleasure.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Honorary.
Bye-bye. There you are. There you are. I'm just going to play a little bit of the intro video just for you to get a feel for that intro video, part of what I could not play earlier on, which I believe.
We're calling for a Windrush Act. Let's review what we called for in July 2024. The Windrush Act. We say to the Labour government, we are still waiting. A message for the Windrush pioneers and their descendants. The Labour Party's general election promise, July 2024. Sir Keir Starmer pledged a fundamental reset to promote respect and dignity for the Windrush generations amid plans to prevent such a scandal from being repeated. His plans include appointing a Windrush commissioner, opening up access to the compensation scheme, and re-establishing the Windrush unit in the Home Office as part of an effort to improve the relationship between the government and the Windrush generation. He accused the Tories, the Conservatives, of having presided over a failing compensation scheme, the disbanding of the Major Change Programme, and a complete unwillingness to learn the lessons of the Windrush Scandal. He said, justice has taken too long for the Windrush community. A government that I lead won't let this happen again. And where the Tories have dragged their feet, I am determined to get money out of the door to compensate those who were failed by the state. Sir Keir Starmer also added, the Windrush generation embodies the best of Britain: determination, spirit, public service, and graft. But instead of being thanked, they've been badly mistreated. A Labour government will offer a fundamental reset moment for the Windrush generation, with respect and dignity at its very core. So said Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. Solicitor.
there you go. Those were the words of Sir Keir Starmer, and indeed, and it's agreed by Anthony earlier on that the Labour government has kept its promises. There's more work to do, mind you, but it's kept its promises. And there's any government, as we all know, if they fail to keep their promises, they should always pay a price. But in this case, the Labour government has kept their promises. I know that MPs, councillors, and other campaigners, that the aims and objectives set out by Anthony in respect of the Windrush Act will be achieved. Because from a moral standpoint, it is perfectly reasonable. Wonderful, wonderful. We're getting back, as I say, after March of next year, once it's had that Burning Works conference, which of course is monitoring the impact of the hostile environment and the here in Britain, the impacts had on those communities. So we've got to repair. This is part of that broader reparations, restitution campaign. I would again thank Anthony Brown and those around him who are leading the march towards the Windrush Act. It is a just cause that it's all our responsibility is resolved as quickly as possible. Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And I say to you, if you're watching this and you've not subscribed to this podcast, I encourage you to do so. You doing so tell the YouTube algorithm that the content is worthwhile, it's engaging, it's imaginative, it's forward thinking, it is worthy of the support. Okay, so we welcome your support, and thank you again. Just subscribe, that helps us. Don't leave without either give us a thumbs up or comment. That'll be fantastic. That also helps us to spread the word. Okay, and if you wish to speak to me or communicate with the Motivator team, okay, why not send a message to us by our email address, and our email address is on the screen. It's the Motivator Show 501 at gmail.com. I repeat, the Motivator Show 501 at gmail.com, and we can add you to our general mailing list, and you'll be kept informed of future episodes, its content, and we welcome your suggestions of a subject or persons you believe we should interview because they fit the essential criteria that they are inspired human beings and adding to improve the human condition. Oh yeah, wonderful, wonderful. We welcome your support and thank you for that. I said before the interview that I would play, in substance, the call by Lee Jasper. The call by Lee Jasper, of course, is that the government, indeed the current Labour government, should allocate more than the mere 7 million to the disaster appeal for the Caribbean, particularly at its impact on Jamaica and Haiti. It is a reasonable appeal, in my view, and a worthy cause to rally behind. So I'm going to play his appeal once more. Please watch keenly. Watch keenly.
Hey family, my name's Lee Jasper. I'm a veteran activist here from London, England. And I just want to talk about Hurricane Melissa and the British government and the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer's response to that hurricane. Family, look, Jamaica and areas of the Caribbean are on its knees. People are desperate, homeless, unable to access medical supplies and treatment. Children are left homeless because their grandmother's house has been completely obliterated. People are unable to go to school. People have no valid forms of employment, and all Britain can offer is £7 million. I mean, it's a disgusting insult to the Jamaican community, and we should be very clear in terms of what our response should be. I'm not sure what we're supposed to say, but thank you to Keir Starmer for 7 million change. I could find more change down the back of this sofa than Starmer seems to have found for Jamaica. And just imagine, people, we spent 20 billion on war for the Ukrainians, 20 billion. And we opened our doors, as we should have done, to victims of war who needed a safe evacuation. But we have exactly the same scenario with people in Jamaica and other areas of the Caribbean, whereby they're homeless, they've got no form of valid long-term employment, they're living on emergency package. Those of us who are in the United Kingdom, who have relatives throughout the Caribbean, should be able to relax our humanitarian visa laws and bring them here so they can have quiet convalescence and respite, care and attention from their families here in the United Kingdom, whilst Jamaica is rebuilding and they can return after that. So we're calling for two things, family. I need your 100% support on this, because once all the Christmas and the emergency stuff has died away, Jamaica is still going to be in a problem, and probably even a bigger problem if the rumoured health outbreaks and epidemics break out as a consequence of lack of sanitation and clean water. And so I'm calling on you to support our petition. You might be able to see the QR code there if I just move to the side. Here is the QR code. Hope it's visible. If not, maybe I can make it more visible. Here is the QR code. All you have to do is put that into your phone and sign the petition. We also have a public meeting on the 12th of December at the engine room in Tottenham Hale. We've done one meeting in Brixton. We're doing another in Tottenham Hale, and we're having another hurricane emergency meeting in Wales, Manchester, as well as Preston. And why are we doing this, family? Because we think we need a national lobby of Parliament on Prime Minister's question time to take 5,000, 6,000 of us to Parliament to press the Prime Minister and your individual MP to increase aid to Jamaica, as Dawn Butler's already written in The Guardian to that effect, and we're fully supportive and behind that. To talk to your Prime Minister and MP and lobby them to relax the visa control. How is it that an 8-year-old child whose parents live in the United Kingdom and who was living with her grandmother in Jamaica is denied visa entry on humanitarian grounds to the United Kingdom? But that's what the latest stories we're seeing coming out of The Guardian and other news outlets. So we need a national lobby. Give Jamaica much more aid. 7 million, make that 50 million. How about that? How we make it 50 million pounds next year that the UK government gives to Jamaica to recover. Humanitarian visa restriction? Yes, so that we can give people respite. Because our family, they're our community. And we're here suffering the anxiety of not knowing we can help, but we can't get them into the country. So I'd ask you to support our call on the Prime Minister to increase aid and relax visa applications. And finally, family, this is going to happen every year with increasing intensity. So Britain and the West, as the major polluters, must pay recompense for climate justice in those countries, or else otherwise, two hurricanes of Melissa's size in over a period of 18 months, as we saw with Beryl and Melissa, would just leave the island completely unsustainable and devastated. Britain must pay more. Britain owes more. Jamaica helped build this country, and they're giving us 7 million. Take it. And I'm asking you to organise mobilising meetings in your local community area so we can take thousands of our community in the new year to the Houses of Parliament to lobby on behalf of our people who are struggling in Jamaica. Thank you. Scan the QR code if you didn't do so already. There it is. And share the video. Peace.
Wow. Well done, Lee. Well done, Lee. And I, of course, have signed that petition. I encourage you to do so. And the QR code is pretty clear. So I'll put it on the screen for you. There you go. That's the QR code. I will take you directly to the change.org website so you could sign that petition. There it is on the screen. And indeed, if you want to do it the other way, go to www.change.org and just type in Britain's 7 million emergency for Jamaica and the wider community is a joke. That's what it's called. It will take you to the relevant page so you could sign that petition. It's vitally important that you do so, that the government hear our words. Okay, you don't have to be Jamaican to sign it. You don't have to be from the Caribbean to sign it. You don't have to be from the continent of Africa to sign it. We've just got to be a caring, considerate human being. That's all. Yep, that's it. We are our brothers and sisters' keepers. Okay, that's it. There you are. I urge you to sign so that the government appreciate the strength of feeling out there in the community on this particular point. And I want to say thank you again to Lee Jasper for his dedication over many decades to the community. Well done, Lee. And lastly, before I go, I want to, of course, remind you of the effort being made by PNP UK to raise funds in order to rebuild that school that we mentioned earlier on. It's so important that we are all change makers. Okay, I'm going to put it on the screen. Here we go. Just watch this. A school. Look at the school it was and how it was devastated by this super hurricane, 185 miles an hour. Yeah. Watch this. The New Building Early Childhood Institution is located in the community of New Building on premises owned by the community. The institution is in close proximity to the Junction Town Centre. The institution began operation in 1978 with 14 students and 1 teacher practitioner and a cook. The school population kept growing and growing over the years, and after operating for 33 years in the same location, it grew out of the facility. In the year 2011, with an enrollment of over 60 students, the school was relocated to its present location in the New Building Community Centre. Presently, there are 36 students, that's 22 girls and 14 boys, enrolled at the school. They cater for children aged 3 to 6 years from the New Building and surrounding communities. The institution now has a staff complement of 4 staff members, 1 principal trained teacher, and 2 practitioners, and a cook. Your help to rebuild the school will be greatly appreciated by a very humble community. Absolutely, it will be appreciated. I know that many of you have got big hearts. Okay, I'll put on the screen details of the disaster relief fund, which will be focused on rebuilding the school. Let's put it on there. There you go. So, of course, it's PNP UK, and you can send your donations to the People's National Party UK. That to emphasise, People's National Party is a social enterprise, not-for-profit social enterprise here. It's not a political party. It simply represents the values of People's National Party in Jamaica and representing Jamaicans here with the British government. But its purpose here is, of course, to raise funds to reinstate the school so that children can go back to education. The bank details, NatWest Bank, sort code 600802, account number 2986123. And in the reference, please include DRF Melissa. There you go. All right. That's it. All donations will be accounted for, acknowledged, okay, and we'll provide regular updates as this school is brought back into use so the children can go back to education. It's quite obvious that the roofing there was somewhat tenuous. We need a better roof, dare I say it, a hurricane-proof roof. I'm sure that's possible. It will cost slightly more, but right now we need to focus on getting that at least a temporary roof in position so that the children can go back to school. Education is vital. I know you would agree with me. Education is vital. and we can all contribute. Just a small amount. Don't stretch yourself. Please do not do that. Just give what you can afford. Okay. And we'll provide regular updates as the school is brought back into use. It may require a completely new building. We may have to afford to do so. That's fine. But it will be a material change in those people's lives. I urge you to give generously where you can. If in doubt, ask questions. So I wish to encourage you, and I may have to put the details up on the screen again, that the PNP, of course, you can write to, there we go, to this pnpuk.secretary@gmail.com. If you wish to write to the PNP, okay, you can write to them on that number, pnpuk.secretary@gmail.com. Okay, and the similar email address for the chair, it's pnpuk.chair@gmail.com. Same. And of course, if you are Jamaican and you wish to join the PNP, just again write to them. They'll gladly want to talk to you. Gladly. It is the right action to take. Okay, we are our brothers and sisters keepers. Okay. And we're judged not by how the most able bodies of us succeed and accelerate, as it were. It's how we manage and support those who are in greatest need, who are not as able as us, not as strong, not as focused. It's how we support such people. That's how our civilizations are indeed assessed. Oh, yeah. I commend that campaign to you. I commend the efforts of PNP UK. I commend their effort to bring that school back into use. Okay, and we'll get them back in the studio in a few months' time to provide a first-hand update on the progress they've made to make a material difference to people in Jamaica who've been badly affected by Hurricane Melissa. There will be a further podcast produced in which the leader of PNP Jamaica and others spoke at a meeting of PNP UK. That meeting was quite illuminating. Again, that podcast will be released in the coming weeks, in the run-up to the festive season, when you've got more time to watch it. I'm assuring you, the information shared is somewhat unsettling. We'd like to believe that all aid is not subject to sort of political bias in any way. But there are questions for the government of Jamaica to respond to answer to. Okay, look, I might reach out to the government of Jamaica, and they may wish to put a spokesperson up, and we speak to them directly. I've got not a problem with that. I'll send the message out, and I'm happy to interview them here on the Motivator Show with our wide coverage here in Britain and Europe, and here Jamaica's in the diaspora, the most critical diaspora that support activities in Jamaica. And let's see what we can do about this. But you are the change makers. I say again, you are the change makers. And together we can and will transform the world. So I say to you, until the next time, I remain the motivator.
We're calling for a Windrush Act. Let's review what we called for in July 2024. The Windrush Act. We say to the Labour government, we are still waiting. A message for the Windrush pioneers and their descendants. The Labour Party's general election promise, July 2024. Sir Keir Starmer pledged a fundamental reset to promote respect and dignity for the Windrush generations amid plans to prevent such a scandal from being repeated. His plans include appointing a Windrush Commissioner, opening up access to the compensation scheme, and re-establishing the Windrush unit in the Home Office as part of an effort to improve the relationship between the government and the Windrush Generation. He accused the Tories, the Conservatives, of having presided over a failing compensation scheme, the disbanding of the Major Change Programme, and a complete unwillingness to learn the lessons of the Windrush Scandal. He said, "Justice has taken too long for the Windrush community. A government that I lead won't let this happen again. And where the Tories have dragged their feet, I am determined to get money out of the door to compensate those who were failed by the state." Sir Keir Starmer also added, "The Windrush Generation embodies the best of Britain: determination, spirit, public service, and graft. But instead of being thanked, they've been badly mistreated. A Labour government will offer a fundamental reset moment for the Windrush Generation, with respect and dignity at its very core." So said Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown and Windrush pioneers and their descendants, we're calling for a Windrush Act in recognition by the United Kingdom that its past actions have unfairly impacted on people of African Caribbean descent, both living in the United Kingdom and in its former colonies. It is a recognition that this impact has consequences across all aspects of people's lives: citizenship, community cohesion, education, criminal justice, work, health. The Windrush Act places a duty on public bodies to reduce race disparities for outcomes in their work, as exposed by the government race disparities audit. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown, Windrush pioneers and their descendants, we're calling for a Windrush Act, an apology for the wrongs that have been done historically by the United Kingdom to people of African Caribbean descent. These wrongs are clearly defined in the Wendy Williams Lessons Learned Review, and it is to the righting of these wrongs that the Windrush Act is addressed. This is not to say that there are not similar wrongs done to other cohorts of people that need to be addressed by similar legislation. This apology is enacted in law so that it's clearly an apology from the nation rather than a here today, gone tomorrow politician. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown, Windrush pioneers and their descendants, we're calling for a Windrush Act, reparations for past wrongs. The reparation for Windrush pioneers who are today living with the consequences of Britain's past wrongs. It is reparation that goes beyond mere financial compensation to individuals, but instead provides resources to affected peoples and communities to support them in what they want to do with their lives. To this end, the Windrush Act will establish a Commonwealth Community Cohesion Fund for the development of projects in the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth to tackle disparities and rebuild socio-economic ties of communities damaged by the Windrush scandals and other historic unfair actions negatively impacting on this cohort. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown, Windrush pioneers and their descendants, we're calling for a Windrush Act, restitution Since 1948, the citizenship of those who arrived on the Windrush and that of their descendants has been repeatedly eroded, particularly by the 1971 Immigration Act and by the current hostile environment. This erosion leaves many within the African Caribbean cohort finding themselves British in all but name, and therefore having to prove their Britishness when it was Britain that eroded and undermined their Britishness in the first place. The Windrush Act fully restores the Britishness to this cohort. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown. Windrush pioneers and their descendants. We're calling for a Windrush Act, remembering to this day, the United Kingdom prefers to tell a story about its colonial past that is often unrecognizable to those who live that past. Only by telling a more honest story about its colonial past can the country show that its citizens of colonial descent are as worthy citizens as any other. The Windrush Act holds the state and its education system to a more honest telling. The Windrush Act remembers what Great Britain meant to those pioneering men and women who saw in the country a set of ideals and values that led them to board the SS Windrush in 1948. We're calling for a Windrush Act. Actions speak louder than words. The time for action is now. Translate our words into action. Contact WD Legal. Website address www.wdlegal.co.uk. Join the campaign to secure the Windrush Act. Together, we will make the difference. Hashtag Windrush Act now. That was the review of what was promised by the new Labour government, led by Sir Keir Starmer. We're calling for a Windrush Act. But has the Labour government lived up to its promises? The interview that follows will review in details what progress has been made and what progress is necessary to be made for the Windrush Act to be signed by His Majesty.